Welcome to Watercolor Wednesday at Church of the Palms, and I'm Cathy Futral, and today I'm going to be working with apples again, like we did last week, but a little different technique. So join me and I will begin. All right, so today we're going to do a version of this larger painting, which is the apples and leaves as they would be growing on the tree, and we're basically going to try to be a little looser than we were when we were painting last week of the apples on a plate. I really focused on the realism here, and obviously we want them to look like apples and leaves, but let's see what happens. I'm going to use this as a reference, and I'm thinking of two things. I'm thinking, you know, if we are looking at I was thinking about sketching a landscape that might illustrate trees and how our vision changes when we're looking at trees that are really, really far away, and they become just these little abstract shapes. But when we're going down a path and we look off in the distance, we could say, oh, there's a bunch of trees. And if we see little red dots, we go, oh, that must be an apple orchard. There's a bunch of trees, that must be an apple. And then they might even group one behind the other, and we have a sense of perspective. Now, the photograph that I made was done in the mountains of North Carolina, and obviously if we were doing a landscape of trees, we would not have the kind of detail we will have with something like this. This is moving right in to the leaves and the apples, and even a bit of a stem. And I think the stem is a connector, like something that helps to unify the design. And that's how I want to approach this today. So on my paper, I'm going to be looking at this photograph and passing it over so that you can see it from time to time. And I want to place a few apples so I know, and I guess I am going to have to do 3. I think that's going to make a nice design, and potentially there are 3 here. So are we okay? This has a branch, and I want to have it look or feel as though this apple is connected. And of course, a lot of these leaves are hanging over and touching and camouflaging a bit. For instance, here, this very large leaf is coming into the design. And I mentioned the vignette. The reason and I bet I can't do it. I bet I'll just end up going right ahead and doing the whole thing. But I'm gonna try. I'm gonna really try. And a vignette means that I'm not going to I'm gonna sort of try to touch the sides, but I might be leaving some white, and then again, maybe I'll get carried away and just put some washes down for my background. All right, so if I did leave some white, then I'm looking at not completing everything. And I'm thinking about this design. I have these main leaves. I have this stem, which maybe I could project coming through on this end and bringing some more leaves down. Okay, let's get started. This apple does have kind of the core, so it's attached. I'm trying to be logical here. This limb is holding this apple, and this apple. And it has a lot. We also want to talk about the lights and shadows that are happening in this design. So with my watercolor paints, I'm going to be working with flats and rounds, because this size and possibly a little smaller round. And of course my water and my palette. And usually before I start, and I was talking instead of planning, and I'll just throw a little water on lots of my colors that I'll be using, which are my warm colors for the apples, and then Again, my greens, I use that Skips green, and I love this Viridian green. But to make this color for the leaves, I'm going to always put a little dab of the burnt sienna or possibly the rose madder, because I don't want that green to be always so bright. Every now and then I will use some of the yellow, such as the Aurelian or the Bumblebee yellow. My Viridian green for my leaves, again, need to be calmed down with a little bit of red so that my green has more of a natural color. All right, I'm going to switch to my reds with my round brush. My red needs to have more of a cad red mixture, and possibly, I don't know, that fuchsia, it depends. I sometimes put a little purple, that amethyst, because I like that for the shadows. So that's how I'm going to be working, and I'll try to describe the paints that I'm using as I go along. Okay, I said it was a vignette, but I have something I want to do first. I want to wet a little bit of the background, and I have the red on my brush, and I want to have a sense of movement through the design. So I know that these are dark places because they're shadows, and this will help to communicate that the painting is thick. The subject matter of, I mean, obviously these are dark colors. So I'm going to place a little bit of that purple, but I didn't pull out my blue, and now I'm going to show some of the blue here with the cerulean and my cobalt blue, and I don't want it to be quite that bright, so I put a little dullness in it with the burnt sienna. And into this background, I want it to be prettier. Let's do a little more of the cerulean blue. That's really dark, and I know that it is dark, but I think I want it to have a feeling of background, but I'm gonna need some green in there. I'm gonna need some dark, and I'm gonna need some greens too. All right, so we were talking about how difficult it is to throw in backgrounds and not have those edges dry hard. So sometimes it's just a matter of adding some water. Now I've got this green puddle right here that I was showing you with the burnt sienna and the Viridian. And I'm gonna place that, I'm gonna go ahead and put some of that dark green in. I feel like that should be more blue in that spot, and bring the dark green in here. And I'm gonna soften that up and kind of let this fade away. I'll put a little yellow green on some of these leaves right now, and I'll soften some of these edges, especially the ones in the background. And this is just an attempt to create a quick beginning with a loose effect. Now we'll come back and put some veins in these leaves. I won't be able to leave them that loose, I know, but it's just to get it started. And sometimes I do leave a negative line or two so that the vein tends to be lighter, and can't really tell what some of my shapes that I drew were supposed to be, but I think that was a leaf there. This is a very major leaf. Could you have attacked this painting with the apples first? Absolutely. I tend, with something like this, to go intuitively with, gosh, I think I want to get the design laid out first. Maybe I'll do a wash or two over the apples, and then I'll come back and deal with some of the detail. This is going to be quite different from the original painting that I did because I honestly labored it too much. I worked on that for about 3 hours, and I don't feel like doing that. I want it to be more fun. So let's see if that can happen. I'm getting a little darker in a few places, and I think it needs those spots of darks. And let's throw in some, oh, I need the blue here. Oh, that's a pretty blue. Okay, I'm gonna throw in some reds. So I told you that I worked on some puddles of red, and the red has some of that cerulean. Where did I get that? That's a blue. My cadmium and my alizarin. Not alizarin, but rose madder. Now the reason I use rose madder instead of alizarin is because alizarin is a stain. You know, it would help if I looked at my photograph. All right, so this has got to be lighter, and this is where the shadows are. And there will definitely be shadows here, especially underneath that leaf right there, okay? So since I began, I did a little bit too much color. I'm going to take some water, just some water on my brush, and soften that up. And just lift and keep the contour with the brush. Now this is going to be my shadow side, so I can go ahead and switch back over to this darker color. And I think I got too much of the purple, but it'll calm down. And it's suggesting an apple without doing a whole lot of detail, but I could still come back in and do some dry brush over that. This one, oh, and I have a leaf here. So this one, I will put some darks in behind that leaf. And let's get a little more cad red. It's very bright, and I should have added a touch of yellow. Maybe I'll take this clean brush that has this clean brush has just water on it, and I'll pick up a little bit of that yellow here. Oh, that's nice. I wish I'd put a little here. Yeah, and while I've got it going, oh, it's turned orange now. Put a little here. Okay, then maybe we'll put the red back in. Is that better? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. Good, thank you. We have to pay attention. It's hard for me to turn around and look to see what y'all were seeing, so thank you for Faith for taking care of that. This is the lighter spot, so I think I'll leave it that way. And I bled a little here, so I have to correct that edge. And this apple now has a great deal of dark. And I'm going to put some darks in here. So maybe we're just going to try to have fun today with the apple study and not be quite so, of course, I've still got to come and put some detail in. Not so, you know, last time we really did do this dry brush, and I do love doing the dry brush. Doesn't that look good when you do that? So I obviously when this dries, I want to do a little bit on that. Now here, this is the lighter section, and then we're much darker. I don't want to lose some of that light. I will add more of the darker red here to get this feeling more shadowed. And especially right here underneath, I do have to lose a little bit of that light. And let's see, I'm probably gonna have to keep adding dark to this one, and I've got blooms going on here where I do want to put some dark. I'll wait on that. So let's play with some leaves, and that'll give that a chance to dry a little bit. The beauty of watercolor is it dries so fast, but sometimes not fast enough when you're working quickly. So you do have to allow 3 to 5 minutes sometimes for, especially when something is really wet. Let's look at which leaves. I keep wanting to go here, and those need to dry. Oh, I know what I need to do. I need to work on the stem, the branch of the tree. And I'm going to use a little bit of that yellow with some burnt sienna. Burnt sienna will make a nice shadowed edge. And it has sort of a nubby feeling here. And because that's in shadow, I want to put a little blue as that goes behind and add a little touch of texture. And there are some other little stems and things going on in here. Maybe I don't really need that. Maybe I will wish I hadn't done that. Okay. That's got to be another leaf here. So let's go back to our light green, a yellow first, and some variety in color, so we're not doing all light green, will be nice. I think I will use the yellow through the center of this leaf. And there are lots of little veins that you can see. And a little line or pattern, line pattern is nice. Let's finish up over here with the rest of that stem. And where we have the shadow, a bit of blue. And let's put that more in shadow. Yes, looks like that could be a leaf or a stem. And I always like to go back on top of the, once the stem is done, really apply a darker line to suggest that that is not receiving any light whatsoever down there. And oh boy, I really do want to put some shadows in here, but I'm not sure I can go quite that wet. Let's see here. This one is going to take some shadows and maybe not between there. And this, I'll let this have a little dark in there. And this would probably, yes, this is definitely going to take some shadows. So I'm going to make this more of a blue-green, where this leaf goes behind. And it's behind this apple. And let's put a little more dark with the brown, the burnt sienna, and the dark, and the phthalo, the viridian green. And that's going to happen here. And what I just do sometimes is take a clean brush. This was got a little paint on it, but we'll soften that up and soften this. Extend that shadow down and put a little bit of calligraphy in there. Oh, not that much. Soften that up with some water. All right, and I need to darken in these spots and up here. I've kind of left the photograph behind, kind of using some logic about where the shadows would be, where I would want to do that. And I'm going to do just a little bit more, and I'm going to ask you to have fun with your painting and see what happens when you get loose with some. You're still going to suggest what the leaves are doing. You know, sometimes you just want it to say, these are leaves out here. But this, I honestly, I know that when this is totally dry, I will come back and put more color on these apples. I just won't be able to help it. But I don't want to overdo it. Okay. This might take a little bit of yellow right here to make that a little more solid. And this might take a little more green. I feel like throwing, doing a few little splatters here. How about that? Okay. Now that was fun. That was absolutely fun. Put some dark up here. Oh, yep, that's okay. I'll take it off the apple though. Okay, all right, are we ready? We want to give that a try? I think that's what we're going to do. Give it a try. Thanks for joining us today.